I want to hear about your weekend because not very many people get to have the weekend you just had playing in the father-son to golf tournament at Cypress Point. I mean, it's what dreams are made of. I want to hear how was the golf course? How was the weather? Were the nights late or were getting to bed early, nice and rested? How was the golf game? Just give me the whole deal.
It's a long, man, so much to unpack there. Let's just go through it as best we can. So, I mean, this is probably the coolest tournament that I've ever played in.
Is this first time?
First time.
Okay. That's a big deal.
And it's sort of an interesting thing because like my granddad's been a member there for a long time, but he has 4 daughters. And for a number of years, it was all the son-in-laws that played in it. Right. So, my dad, my uncle, stuff like that. Then it kind of at a certain point flipped over to the grandkids. There are several grandkids in our family that are better at golf than I am. So they naturally got the nod first. My granddad likes to win. Understandable. My brother David got the nod last year. I think they won their flight, but did not win overall. Then my uncle got into Cypress, which is amazing. So that took like 3 grandsons off the board. They're playing with him now. So it cleared the way for a little, it's like, it's like they opened up a few more exemptions, a little extra action for the rest of us. So yeah, this is the first time I got the nod. I guess it's the 26th one they've done at Cypress. And, so we were, and I think I was reminded a number of times by people there. It's like, hey, they've had it 26 times. And your granddad's probably won about 24 or 25 of them. No pressure at all. It's like, great. This is going to go really, really well for me. So I started the weekend off in a great place by getting into San Francisco, like really, really late on Thursday night. I thought there was going to be a practice round on Friday. It was not. There was a match at 9:30 a.m. So I got to Pebble Beach at like 1 a.m. Stopped at In-N-Out on the way, by the way. I can't.
Yeah. Where was your headspace going into thinking you get a practice round? You're right into it. I don't think you were in that good of a spot.
Not great at all. I think we exchanged texts about this. Like I am, I need a practice round. I'm a guy that, especially these days, like going from playing a ton of golf and like heading into tournaments at the club, you get a little bit of time to kind of figure out what's right or wrong with your game. It's like now it's, we have, young children, we have work during the week. It's like, I'm just showing up, hitting the ground running. So that first event that first 9-hole match, I was almost just like, maybe if I just don't think about this at all, like it'll be fine. Like just don't overthink any shots. So shotgun, we go off on 15, which is that little short par 3 at Cypress, the kind of the cove juts in there. It's so 15, 16 start, like the stuff of nightmares. So on 15, and we're playing a better ball in these first 2 days. So I hit a nice little like smooth gap wedge on 15 to like maybe like 20 feet. Leave the first putt like way short because I'm super nervous, but make the par. And I'm like, all right, things are going to be good. Like this is going to be fine. Get to the 16th tee. It's like a 225-yard shot or something over the water. Snap hook it into the water on the left. So it's just like, all right, this is already like, this is going bad. We have the pole hooks. I'm
gonna before you try to describe the 17th hole. I think everyone's aware what 15, 16, 17 at Cypress looks like. So I think you can just go and assume you don't have to lay it out. The picture we've all seen the pictures. So just before you get describing it, just like we know. I'm assuming you either know what I'm talking about or you can easily go and Google this. So that match, we were kind of down for a while and then battled back and got a tie there. So a little 5-5 tie to start the weekend off, which you're like, okay, the whole goal of day one is you don't play yourself. You can play yourself into the lead, but you don't want to play yourself out of it. So it's like, that's fine. Then the afternoon was awesome. So it's this thing called the Montrachet Cup where it's all the sons playing a 1-club tournament. So they randomly pair you with A, B, and C players. You each get 1 club and you only get 3 balls total. Once you lose all your golf balls, you got to go back to the clubhouse and drive the beverage cart out and supply everyone with refreshments as you play the rest of the loop. And the loop is 1, 14 through 18. So we what club did you pick?
7-iron.
Yeah, I feel like that's the right play. It was definitely, it came in handy. I hit a sick bunker shot on one, just open face, like greenside bunker, splash that thing out to like 15 feet. I was like, that was so dope. Like that was one of the coolest shots I've ever hit in my life.
Part of me thinks I would pick like a 3-wood.
Okay. So I played a 1-club tournament at home in Durham where I used a 2-iron. And it was so good on the putting green. Like I made one like 20-footer and narrowly missed like 2 other 25-footers. Like this was like not it gets a little bit dicey in the in-between times,
the bunkers, like a greenside bunker. I guess you could probably get a 2-iron out better than a 3-wood, like, or just getting out of the bunker to where then you can hit the next one.
Kind of depends on lip height, right? Like you could we've all seen the old guy who's got the putt out of the bunker. Like just runs it up the lip. Like you can maybe do that, but I think for the most part, like if it's even a reasonably high lip, like there's just no chance. So we had a shotgun. We started at 18, made a cool 10. I was like, I hit a 7-iron off the tee, and like 18, you got to hit like a 5 or 4-iron to get it like over this tree to give you a clean shot. It's like a dog leg right up the hill. So we were like
18,
18, yeah. So we were short there, and like,
where do you stand on that hole?
What do you mean? It's a really interesting debate because it's like a lot of people dump on it as like you have this amazing scenic run along the ocean, then you're like coming back inland with this funky sort of dog leg. I think it's a great like separator. Like if you're coming down the stretch in a match and you want something where it's like you really got to kind of place that tee shot carefully and then hit a semi-blind uphill shot.
Aim though. It's so odd. It's not my favorite. I think it's a cool second shot, but it's it's more of a 7th hole than it is an 18th hole is where I stand.
That tee shot, I agree with you there. I can't tell you how many times I've been like, surely I can cut more off to the right? Like surely I can go further right of the and then you hit it up there and you're jailed going up the hill.
Dude, I hit 3-wood so far through the fairway. It's still going. And I thought I striked it. He said, yeah, aim at that tree. Well, there's 40 of them out there.
I hit a hybrid in our match that morning that I might have hit it off the planet. Like I just like snapped into the woods, and they're like they didn't even attempt to look. They're like, yeah, that's gone. Just you're in pocket for the rest of this hole. But yeah, so I was like hyping up this guy I just met, Sam Palmisano Jr., awesome guy. We had another partner, and I was like, yeah, you can hit over this tree, man. You can clear with your 7-iron. It hits it like straight in the tree, drops down the trap. And then we're like trying to like hit all these rescue shots. So we card a cool 10 on 18. We keep it going, like not playing like, one, I think we made like a 7 or something, made a legit par on 14 and 15, which is no small feat with the 1-club tournament. We did not win the Montrachet Cup, but we had a couple cool moments. There's like a little kind of overlook over in between 15 and 16 at Cypress, and they had like all these. They're like pouring like Montrachet wine for this.
It's the best walk in the world. Like from 14 to 15 and 15 to 16 are probably my most favorite walk I've ever had on a golf course.
It's
and
just
you're sitting
amazing.
there drinking. Right.
That was probably the coolest part about it is you're playing it like it's silly season. It's like all these holes where you've taken them so seriously for so many years. You're like, oh, we're just doing this for fun now. Like we're drinking wine, we're hanging out, we're like meeting new friends, and like it's like you never really get to experience it in that context. But they had like a little sign that like took you off and was like Montrachet refill, and you're like, oh great, like we're all like walking down this path, and you get there and it's like a bottle of Patron. You're like, oh God. So we took these shots, and then I had the tee shot on 16. I was standing over the ball. I was like, how many golf balls are down there in front of me? Like it was a little nervy there, but nice little layup on 16, but it was a ton of fun playing with those guys. Got to give props to Ed Hurley's son, Todd Hurley. Took home the Montrachet Cup. Like real gutsy stuff. I don't think they made a single double, which is stunning to me, like in a 1-club tournament of that on those holes. So props to Todd and them boys. So that was a 1-club. That was Friday night. Really happy I had a late tee time on Saturday because I needed a little bit of rest and recovery.
Saturday we started out. We played my cousin and my uncle. So my cousin and my uncle ended up winning the flight. Jamie McFarland, David McFarland ended up winning the flight and won the entire tournament, which we at the time were like a nice little grudge match, but it was they deserved to win the whole thing. But so we lost to them in the morning, and then we played a match in the afternoon. We were like 2 down on 6th green, and guy we were playing against 4 jacks the 6th green, so we win the hole. Then I make a par on 7, we win that hole. I make a birdie on 8, we win that hole. And then we have the last hole to win the match. So we're like, all right, we're in this thing going into the final day on Sunday. Really, really cool dinner that night on Saturday night. We like all the sons wrote letters to their fathers and grandfathers about like how they, the things they did to kind of encourage their love in golf and like, teach them the game and stuff like that. It was like, super cool idea by the head pro at Cypress, Casey. So that was a kind of special deal. And then Sunday was one of the more bizarre formats I've ever played in my entire life. It was like taking like advanced algebra because you were playing alt shot, modified alt shot because you were teeing off odds and evens, but like everything else was just like, alt shot as we know it, against 2 different teams. So it's a 6-some, a 3-ball 6-some, and you're playing a match against both teams. And so you're like, you can't like you get up there. It's like you hit a putt. It's like, okay, is that good with you? Yeah. Okay. Is that good with you? No. Okay. All right. We got to mark it and putt it, but it's good in this match. And then they reduced the amount of points. So it was like a half point for a hole win, a quarter point for having the hole, and no points for losing the hole. So like I would just at numerous times in the match, like look at this thing and be like trying to do math in my head and be like, I'm more confused than when I started looking at this card. Like I have no clue. So we had some good moments in that match. I hold out a sand shot on 15 for birdie. That was pretty sweet. On
15?
On 15. Yeah.
Wow.
It was front pin on 15, and we were in that bunker up front, and they had, I think both of the other guys were on, and so I was like, man, I just need to kind of hit this close, make sure we make par and have the hole. And it's like, oh, how about I just hit it in the hole? That also works.
I love to see it.
Dude, I had a great day out of the sand. I hit a 35-yard bunker shot on 8 to like 2 inches for a gimme. I hit a open face 5-iron out of a fairway bunker on 6, like on the green from like, I don't even know what it was, like probably like
300 yards, probably 3.
Like 195-yard shot. I was like, this is sick, dude. Like, I'm like, I might be good at golf. I had a horrendous day putting. A horrendous week putting.
I mean, I'm not going to say I saw that coming, but I did. We've got a lot of work to do. Can't fix Charlie's putting is I don't know when off season starts for you, but we got to hit it hard. We got too many bad things going on in your putting.
You've been really kind to offer some suggestions that I tried to implement as best I could this weekend, moving my head around less. But I'm also like looking around the landscape. I'm looking at Lucas Glover winning this weekend at the Wyndham, and I'm saying, is it broomstick time?
You're going to go to the broomstick. Honestly, I don't think that would be a bad idea for you because right now you prefer heavy putters, it seems like, because you can keep the path correct, but you move around like a Ferris wheel trying to putt. So it's just not going to be any, it's just it's watching like a seesaw. When you putt, you go to your front foot on the way back, and then you go to your back foot on the way through. And it's basically just a reverse pivot for a putting stroke, which is going to cause big time problems.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I saw there were a lot of certified big time problems out there on the green this week. I do like the counterbalance, like jailbird. I like the putter. I'm just not a good putter. That's what I've come to realize.
No. You're going to be. We got to change our language. We're going to be a good putter. We're just not there yet.
We're just not there yet.
We're just not there yet.
We're just not there yet. But you've been committed to helping me get there, which I very much appreciate. And we will get there. I believe that, whether or not it's broomstick time. I mean, look, PGA Tour Superstore. I was waiting for a club last week, and I was rolling that what's that? That lab putter, that lab broomstick, the one that Adam has. Oh my God. I was making everything. I made like a 30-footer with that thing diagonal across the green. I was like, I got to put this thing down because I'm going to walk out with it. It was just unbelievable.
Do you know how many people have walked out of PGA Superstore? Yeah, I'm guessing whoever does the mats for them for the putting green just makes everything a funnel, because I've never heard somebody say, dude, I couldn't miss. I could not miss on the putting green at wherever Superstore you're going to try to putt to get a new putter. Like, why wouldn't they like create these funnels to make it to where you make more putts? It's a simple deal.
It's you're 100% correct. And it's like, it's amazing. Like, I know I'm getting suckered. Like, I'm in the moment. Like, I'm like, this is a sucker move, but I can't help but, I mean, I'm a sicko. I'm a sicko putting tinkerer. I know I have a disease. I can't help it, but I'll just put a bow on that by saying super cool weekend at Cypress. Don't know if I don't know if I'm going to get the invite back given the state of my mediocre play this week, but at the same time, amazing event they put on. Really cool to be with my granddad. And yeah, man.
Dude, you can't beat Cypress Point. So my weekend does not even compare to that. But
played Shoal?
I played Shoal Friday with one of my roommates from college, Franco Castro. His brother played on tour, Roberto. Had a great time. My brother played as well, and my buddy AV. And yeah, it was a good time. Played really pretty nicely at Shoal, and then we played Vestavia the following day, which is a course that I typically just kind of tear up every time I play it. And I just was off. I made some swing changes, like to try to make some adjustments and going into my off season where I'm about to start playing more golf. I just hadn't had time to work on it. So I started kind of implementing that in Friday's round and saw some good stuff. Like the range session was nice. And then it just did not work at all on Saturday, to where I had to pivot and go back to my old swing because I knew at least what that was going to do. So, but then when you're kind of cross between those, then none of it's just right. So I wasn't happy with the way I played Saturday, but
so what are you working on? Like what's the type of stuff you're trying to get, where you are now to where you want to
go? I changed to a little stronger of a left hand bowed position at the top, to where I can just literally rotate as hard as I want. And I have not been able to get as much width in the golf swing as I'd want to on the downswing, and have tried to get to where my arms come down a little bit more in the downswing, to where I can kind of get some late width in my right arm, to where it's not like where my left shoulder just doesn't get too high through impact. And so as I'm trying to get my arms down, I just have such fast hips. I kind of, like the old drill that Tiger used to try to have his arms outrace his body and his hips. Well, I was trying to do that, but it's just such an awkward feel. And I just made some poor swings where I made some good swings, but just, I want to get the club face a little bit more consistent towards not as open quite as long in the downswing, where it's just my left shoulder tends to have to ride up through impact, where I'd rather be my arms connected to me and more level. So I think I'm going to keep working on that, but it was not a good showing on Saturday.
I mean, I feel like this is, file this in the department of just like, got to spend some time working on the putting changes. I feel like, you'll eventually get there with these changes. What I really want to see is, now that we have a freshly launched YouTube page, can we get some Smylie swing breakdowns on there? I mean, that's the content that people that got to have, they want.
Yeah, no, I'll have some time to play some golf coming up. So we'll see see where we stand.
Well, that's our golf weekend synopsis, which is rapidly becoming one of my favorite podcast segment staples. Because listen, we're at the end of the day, we're just a couple golf nerds, man. Can't get away from it.
Trying to find it, man.
Love it too much. Trying to find it. Love it. Enjoying the search. And I think that, coming off a little bit of a putter tinkering talk, little broomstick talk, I think that dovetails nicely with the finish this weekend on the PGA Tour at the Wyndham, with Lucas Glover winning for the first time since winning the John Deere in 2021. And prior to that, his last one was 2011 at the Wells Fargo. And I think the big thing for him really has been figuring out the putter, going to the broomstick. He went to the broomstick at Memorial, and entering this week, he was 180th in strokes gained putting this season. And so there's even been some improvement in that period of time, but still 180th. And this week, at least the most updated stats I looked at before we started recording, he was 15th in the field in strokes gained putting. So just starting with, both what you're seeing with him and his stroke and his confidence on the greens, and just, here we are talking about the psyche of putting, and just how it can be such a complex sort of issue, or a complex, sort of deal where you're trying to kind of figure out, not only the mental side of it, but the physical side of it, the mechanical side of it, and what a huge impact this has had on Lucas's game.
Yeah, no, I think with any person that has fought something mental in their game, like Lucas has, and I have fought similar type stuff with the golf swing, controlling the golf ball. So we would have been a match made in heaven if I could have just putted for him and he could have hit the driver and the irons for me at a period of time. We'd have been a pretty good team. But with that being said, how do you get out of what people label the yips? And we've seen Lucas Glover at the Wyndham Championship have a putt to shoot a 59. And I don't know how many years ago that was, but he barely caught the heel of the putter on the putt. And then on the way back, same deal, ends up shooting 61. And just knowing that's what he's battling, it's just this has been going on for a long time now. This isn't just something that was just a fluke thing. He had been dealing with the putter woes for quite some time, and he's done a lot of different things to try to fix that. And I think all the things that he's done is create new experiences. And what I mean by that is when he makes changes with the putter, for the most part, they're kind of wholesale changes, which I think is pretty smart. And some people might say, oh, well, the bigger the change you make, the harder it is to get any consistency. I think from a mental standpoint, which is I think 90% of what he was probably battling was mental issues with stuff inside of 5-6 feet or so. When you change to something so different than something you were doing before, it creates almost like a game in your mind. It's like, oh, I haven't done this before. I have to learn how to do this. And it's like tricking your mind into getting confidence in something new. And I think this last change, so he changes to the broomstick, and since the Memorial, he's been kind of on a tear with the putter as far as, he's like a player, man. If he's just in the top 20 in the putting, he's going to be around the lead because that's how good of a ball striker he is. His golf ball makes a total different noise than everybody else's. It's his golf swing, and the way he can hit a golf ball is as impressive as anybody on the PGA Tour. So combine that with, any week that he's in the top 20 in the putting, it's just, he's going to be right there. And that's what we saw this week at the Wyndham Championship. And he made some legit putts down the stretch, some downhill foul. I mean, those greens are fast, man. And he had a lag putt on 16 that went by probably 4 feet or so. I couldn't really tell by the camera angle. And I'm thinking in my head, like, wow, this could be a situation where we have like a 4 putt, like if he's got any type of nerves going on, he could hit this thing easily 6 feet by and miss that. Next thing you know, it's a ball game. But he hit it perfect speed right in the middle of the hole. And it just felt like he was never going to lose that golf tournament once he made that putt on 16.
The putting stuff, golly, just resonates so much in terms of, in your words, creating a game out of it. Just doing something that feels completely different from what you're doing so that you can try to work at that and accomplish a new feel and kind of replace the old memories or the old files in your head with new ones that don't come with any of the existing baggage you had before. I'm curious on that point, just in changes you made over your career, whether it's full swing putting or whatever else, how do you know like, because all that stuff I imagine initially feels uncomfortable. Some of the stuff, again, I'm not a tour pro, but some of the stuff that I've done, it's like, this doesn't feel right now. But how do you make the kind of distinction between this is uncomfortable, but it's the right thing, and if I spend enough time, I can make it comfortable and it'll be right long term, and this is uncomfortable because this doesn't work biomechanically for me or mentally for me. And, at a certain point, I need to say, I need to bail on this and reject this and either go back to the old thing or try something new because it's never going to work for me.
That's a great question. And a good player knows pretty quickly because let's say it's the full swing. Like I, for instance, would go through my entire shot tree and I would try to hit a low draw. I would try to hit low fades, medium fades, like all the windows. And if I'm able to do that, now let's say I'm not doing it every time. Well, there's a point to where when you talk about like, is it going to work the whole time? It's if I can do it and I see it and it feels right, my body mechanics feel right, it comes out in the right window, it's the right number, all of it makes sense in my head. From there, it goes from, okay, now I know how to do this. Now I just got to put the reps in. And that pretty much is the track I've always had on how to improve in the game is first off getting a plan together, getting the right ingredients, because your medicine that you need 1 month from the next may be different. It kind of always changes. But for instance, when we're talking about a wholesale change and when guys go to new teachers and they get all this new information and they're trying to sort it in their heads and that now, let's say they had 1 or 2 swing thoughts and now they have 5 or 6. And they go to try to do all of these things that their coach is telling them. And it may work, but it has to get eventually narrowed down to where, first off, you got to be able to put the reps in. It's got to make sense in your head. It's like, okay, can we simplify this down? Because right now it's just information overload, which is where in your head, probably you're thinking, wow, wouldn't that be really hard for somebody to change something so crazy? But really it's vital to sometimes somebody that's really struggling to totally change it up and have a totally new experience. And when I think about this in a grander scheme of how many players have been successful with that, it really, when you look at Tiger Woods and how many different coaches that he went through and how many reps he put in and still was able to be as good as he was, just tells you how good he was, because I've been through it and I just have no clue how he was able to have all this different information and be able to make it work. Because not many people would be able to do that, but he's a GOAT for a reason.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think what you're saying does make a ton of sense. At least it helps me understand it, where it's like, hey, it's nice to kind of get a change in a new feel, but let's take it for a test drive. Let's go through the entire shot tree and all the things that I have to do in competition and see if it still works for all those things. And if it does, great. Okay, well then now let's go try it in competition and see if it still works there. But I mean, regardless, an amazing performance by Lucas Glover this week. And I think the loser in this situation, of course, the biggest name is Justin Thomas, which we've covered a little bit on this podcast. I mean, there are a lot of things that moved on that FedEx Cup playoff standings, but the big one was Lucas Glover jumping from 112th in the FedEx Cup playoff standings and out of the playoffs to 49th, 63 spots up and into the playoffs with the win. So just kind of going back and looking at JT's weekend, finishing just one spot out of the playoffs. And we saw it all on 18. It was like such a culmination of emotion, that big hooky hit around the corner and the kind of spinning body and running out to see where it ended up. And then a pitch shot that he almost, makes and then just kind of collapses, in a pile of emotion there, just short of the green and just almost got it done. But you look at kind of the way he finished that week, shooting after an opening round 70, he shoots a 65, a 66 and a 68. And I don't know, like, I'm just not sure that that's all bad. I think if you're Zach Johnson, okay, the playoffs are obviously off the board right now, but what's the next thing for him? Ryder Cup. And so, if I'm Zach Johnson, I'm looking at that. It's like, he's showing me what I want to see out of him. Even if he didn't get there to the playoffs, like that's something. Do you view it in the same way? I mean, I know you see the disappointment not making the playoffs, but how do you assess the week that JT had?
I thought he did everything that that he set out to do without, ultimately getting the job done. I thought he had some very poor breaks coming down the stretch, not only for him, but really, I'm sitting here looking at the leaderboard, and Charlie Hoffman makes an albatross on the 15th hole, and he ends up tying JT. So there's one guy that kind of snuck in there. But what too that he had an issue with is he got put on the clock with 4 or 5 holes left, and the group behind him wasn't ever even waiting. So he's dealing with that. And then that entire front that caused the rain delay, he's finishing up. All the players are dealing with that as well. But he did happen to make a bogey with a gust wind, where when we talk about the guys who finished later, they didn't play in any wind. It was dead calm. So kind of tough for him in the fact that maybe if everybody was playing in the same conditions, he may have held up, because I see like my man JT Poston finished. He finished 3 under on his last 5 holes. Just another guy that kind of snuck in there. He bumped JT out really, because it was so close for so long. And, it's a bummer, but I know he did everything he probably felt like he could do on especially on Sunday. He grinded his tail off, really just that putt on 14, but he made a huge putt on 15. That eagle just felt like, man, that's what I'm used to seeing from the guy, just big moments coming up big. And in regards to your question with the Ryder Cup, I don't know. It stinks in the fact that he doesn't get to keep making a case for himself, because all the other guys are going to be able to kind of continue to build their resume and keep showing quality golf, where Zach gets to continue to watch it. So again, JT's going to need to dodge some bullets from guys not having big weeks. I don't know if it's going to come down to that, but in my head, if I were Zach, first off, I wouldn't want to be Zach in this situation, because going into the year, this is just not even a question mark whether JT was going to be on the Ryder Cup, because he's been your best player on all of these international teams for how many years now. And it just seemed like he was going to be the front running leader to get the Americans over the hump in Europe. And you just felt like going into the year, didn't matter. JT was going to be playing your toughest match in the single session. And it doesn't matter who it is, who he's going up against, but that's the guy you want going into battle, because first off, he's proven that he can do it. And second off, it's just the experience and playing over there is unlike any pressure that many people have felt. And he's had a chance to kind of live that experience and have some success in it. So in my head, I just don't see how you still don't take him.
I'm with you in a lot of ways. I think it's like you're just looking for signs of life this week. And I think that, now he gets to kind of go really grind and work on the parts of his game. Like, to a certain degree, I imagine, and you can correct me if I'm wrong and from a tour player's perspective, but I'm sure there's stuff he wants to work on, but you're also in the middle of trying to make the FedEx Cup playoffs.
True.
And so it's like, now you get a couple weeks to go and try to clean that stuff up. But also looking at the kind of the Ryder Cup point standings, that cuts off after the last playoff event.
It's August 6th. Just a reminder. It's August 6th.
August 6th.
September. I think it's September 28th or so is when the Ryder Cup starts. Who knows who's going to be in form 2 months from now.
But again, though, like I think I forget the exact announce date when Zach Johnson announces the team. I think he announces it after the Tour Championship, but I think the points cutoff is after the BMW Championship. So that's 2 weeks from now. That's 2 events from now, right? Yep. The St. Jude, the BMW. So looking at this list now, and we had this much further down the rundown, but I think it's worth mentioning in this context is, Bryson DeChambeau just shot a 58 in the Live Golf event at a former tour venue at the Greenbrier, and say what you want about the competition, I think that's notable in some way, shape, or form. So if you're looking at this list now, and we have the 6 guys that are automatically in as of now, which are Scheffler and Clark are actually already on the team. They're already qualified. And then you have Brian Harman, Brooks Koepka, Xander Schauffele, Patrick Cantlay. Freddie Couples, an assistant captain. Okay, I know he's not the captain, but he told you pretty definitively last week that Max Homa, Cam Young, and Jordan Spieth should be on the team. So then here's the kind of pool of other guys out there that you could potentially consider. 10, 11, 12 are Keegan Bradley, Colin Morikawa, and Ricky Fowler. Then you got Sam Burns at 13. You got Justin Thomas at 14. You have Tony Finau at 19. Jeez, also worth mentioning, Denny McCarthy, who's been hot of late at 15, a great putter, a guy who could be an asset, for that team as a specialist. And then, you have the live guys. You got DJ and Bryson, who's rounding into some form right now. So, I mean, where
it's tough, dude.
It's tough.
I mean, I know that Zach Johnson's not going to be looking just at these Ryder Cup standings, that he's going to be looking at a lot of different things. And these are very heavily weighted towards the majors, which is why you see Brian Harman and Wyndham Clark sitting at 2-3. These majors in a Ryder Cup year are what got these guys so high up in these standings. So there's going to be different things that Zach Johnson's going to be looking at, because we look at the top 10 in the FedEx Cup and you see Tony Finau. He was 9th heading into the week. I assume he's probably still right around there. But that's not reflective of where he is on the Ryder Cup standing. So we got a guy that's sitting at 19, but he's 9th in the FedEx Cup. It's like, hold on, that doesn't add up. So there is definitely going to be a lot of different things they look at as far as what are their actual standings they're looking at from the guys who are not already qualified via the Ryder Cup standing. So in my head, it's just so difficult to make that decision if you're Zach Johnson, but goodness gracious, I just don't know who the heck you leave off.
I mean, if it's me, I know no one, not that anyone's asking, but I mean, I think going over on foreign soil presents a unique challenge in terms of like really needing good team camaraderie and being, having guys that can play together and withstand, the crowds over there. It's going to be a boisterous, it's going to be a European crowd that wants to win this thing back. And so I'm looking at the guys on this board right now, and like, I feel like you got to take.
He said about Cam Young. That kind of surprised me that Freddie said that he's a lock. To me, that definitely he hasn't played his way into being a lock yet. In my head,
I think the thing, if I'm like trying to make sense of what Freddie's saying there, it must be that they know that Cam Young is going to continue to develop as a player, and it's like you want to have this guy get some form of experience for him in these events. Played in the President's Cup last year, get him more experience.
But didn't play well. He didn't play well last year at the President's Cup.
100% right. And Freddie was an assistant on that team too, so he saw him play there. Probably has an insight into what type of guy he is in that team setting. But I think like, and this is no disrespect to any of these guys, because as we're saying, there are a ton of great options. But I feel like you got to take Ricky, given his current form. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at the two other guys out there, and I'm like, hey, we're talking a lot about, could Denny McCarthy be a putter specialist? You know who else is a really great putter? Sam Burns. You know who has a connection with on that team? The best guy on the roster, Scotty Scheffler. I want to play match play with him. I take Burns, and I take JT to play with Spieth. I think it's tough luck for.
So you leaving Morikawa off the team?
And this is no disrespect to Colin at all. He's an amazing ball striker. But I think, the highest heights of his game were a couple years ago. His ball striking got a lot better again this year after a down year last year. But he's a guy who's a little bit of a shaky putter in some of those big moments. And so
you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I think that if you're kind of picking between guys that are, kind of further down that list, and you're seeing the way you can combine them. Now, I know Morikawa can play with Homa. You can make that argument too. But I just think a guy like Burns is a good putter, could be great in all shot format with Scotty, and a guy like J2, who now, I think it's a blessing in disguise. He goes out on a relative high note and gets some time to work on his game. I just think that gives you a really good shot. It's crazy though. It's cruel to a lot of these guys.
You know what's going to happen too in the playoffs is Denny's going to win, Sam Burns is going to win, and Colin Morikawa is going to win, and the team is. And I really think if something like that were to happen, Zach's hand is forced if guys show up and play and win and play good at the right times, there's nothing he can do about it. It's just,
might statistically be forced, or, just on qualifying points, what I mean? Because if someone,
right.
If any of those guys you listed wins one of those events, which will have elevated purses, and the whole point system is based on money won. If one of those guys vaults their way into the top 6, and then you're bumping like a Xander or a Cantlay down, I mean, good Lord, dude. I mean, it's going to be an insane, like if anyone below 12, wins, like to your point, if Denny wins one of those events, Tony Finau wins one of those events, I mean, it's going to be total mayhem. So, I mean, I think it ultimately what you're talking about is a good problem to have, because these are all good players. If they're winning, they're in form, but it's going to get intriguing. And it's one of those things where you talk about it every week, but it continues to be an interesting topic every time you bring it up, because just the slight changes in form for all these guys. So, one to keep an eye on for sure.
No, absolutely. And you kind of touched on Bryson too. Yeah. I mean, the 58 is, I don't watch a ton of live golf. I keep up with it on how guys play and for instance, what type of form they're in. I've seen Bryson's golf swing this year, and to me, it looks a lot tighter than it has in the last couple of years. It seems like he's starting to get some control back in his game. I don't think he played well at sitting here looking at where he finished at the Open Championship, finished 60th. He's not a great links player. That hasn't been something that he's really excelled in, but finished 20th at the US Open and T4th at the PGA. It's not like those are bad results by any stretch of the imagination, and shot or missed the cut at his par 67 Masters tournament. But other than that, it's still that shtick is never going to die with that one. But
Claire Rogers had a really good tweet about that today. I think she said something like, the 58 is made that much more amazing by realizing it to be a 53 at Augusta National. I don't know if I quoted that exactly right.
Did you know he made a bogey?
Yes. I was just about to say that. There are 13 birdies, no eagles, by the way, because that's the first thing I looked at is, which hole did he eagle? Because he's a long hitter. 13 birdies and 1 bogey. I mean, can you imagine?
The scores were so low, so it just had to be just so soft, and
4 pars.
Yeah,
4 pars.
I love the green bar. That was one of my favorite events to play when it was still on the PGA Tour. But yeah, dude, I don't think Bryson's going to make the team, but it's good to see him playing well again. It seems like he's kind of got his life back in order. But like I said, I mean, it's going to be difficult for these live golf guys they really got to just separate themselves to the majors, kind of like what, Brooks winning at the PGA just basically solidified. If Bryson was a little bit more in the mix of the PGA, I know he finished 4th, but well, I guess he was in the mix. And now I think about it, he was pretty close, but I don't know. It's just tough, dude. It's just really difficult because none of the team really probably wants any live guys on, it's just
right. Well, that's the one. I think it's just the reality of the situation. Is like every time Zach Johnson's been asked about it, he initially was very kind of hard on the look. We're probably not going to take those guys, but the headline over everything has been, we're going to let the guys in that team room make decisions on those picks. We're going to go to those guys and get their input from our key sort of leaders, or the guys who qualified. And if you're going to those guys and they're saying, we don't want that guy on the team, and you're not an automatic qualifier, it's just not going to happen. And so it works for a guy like Brooks Koepka, who is still really well liked on tour.
Yeah, the guys get along with Brooks. They get along with. I don't know if Cantlay and Brooks get along very well anymore, but yeah, I don't know. Like even Dustin, guys would have loved to have Dustin on the team 100%. If he had a good year. I don't think guys are going to be calling Zach and say, dude, you got to get Bryson on the team. I think there's probably enough of just the way he left the tour. I think people kind of got tired of that. I think he's changed a little bit since. He was definitely was kind of yelling as he was leaving the PGA Tour. So I don't know. It's gonna be an interesting couple weeks.
Well, just zooming out even further to kind of other bigger picture news items on the tour in this last week. The first one being Tiger Woods joining the PGA Tour policy board. And so the kind of the timeline of events there was about a week ago on Monday. a group of more than 40 players led by Tiger delivered a letter to Jay Monahan that kind of detailed a list of demands. And, among things they're asking for, the biggest was, look, hey, we want more transparency here. We want more information here. And in that memo that Jay actually put out days before that, it was like one of the positions they were creating was a liaison of sorts to the players so that they could be up to date as much as possible on every piece of the negotiation between the PGA Tour and the PIF. So they delivered that sort of list of demands. And then they one of the requests they made was to install Tiger as a 6th player director on the PGA Tour policy board. And that was, of course, announced this last week. And so I'm just curious, as a guy who's had tour membership, there's a little bit, and I'm still not even clear on this reporting, where a lot of places are saying it gives them a majority vote, but it isn't really a true majority vote, because it's like 6 players, 5 non-player board members, and the 6th is like from the PGA of America, I believe. So I guess it all depends on how you view that in terms of how groups could potentially vote together, where, will the PGA of America representative vote with the non-player board members? I don't know. But what they can do is, in any instance, they could have at least 6 votes to counteract the other 6 votes and say, that's not going through unless we approve it. So that's how I understand it. And feel free, people who are legal scholars understand it's better, chime in on Twitter, Instagram, wherever else, and tell us we're wrong and tell us why we're wrong. But that's kind of how I understand it. And so I'm just curious, as a guy who has tour membership, what do you think about Tiger coming on, and how does this sort of shift the way the tour looks in the future in terms of player input and control?
I think the players are going to me, in my head, is that they're starting to get control of their tour. And I feel Tiger Woods being added is such a big deal, because who's going to say to Tiger Woods, of somebody from the board, like, hey, no, you're wrong on this. Like, and Tiger may be wrong on some things that can be debated between the group. But when Tiger and the group of players agree, like, hey, this is what we want to get done, and it's fair, and this is what this is, or on the other side of it's like, no, we do not want to do this. Like, this is not in our best interest, and we think it would be bad for our tour. And Tiger's the one presenting that, or it's approved by Tiger. To me, it's just a step in the right direction, right? Because the way that whole thing went down, man, I think every single tour player is sitting in their head, because the PR didn't start just then when it broke. It started a year before that. And none of the players got to tell Jay Monahan and the PGA Tour, hey, this is what we want our message to be with Live Golf. And really, it was just a shouting, screaming match between 2 parties that the players just sat there like, hey, like, we don't know what's going on, but we're just uncertain about our future. And then all that crap comes out with the framework stuff with the PIF. And now we're like, wait, who's our boss? And it's like, wait, is this our tour? And I think now they having the right guys, or at least just Tiger in there, just, to me, what has happened is all the adults are at the table now. Mm-hmm. We have all of the adults at the table that are going to be making the proper decisions for the tour as they move forward. And as they negotiate between back and forth with sides, I'm told that they have somebody that they really trust, and they feel like they're going to always end up with the best situation or deal that is best for the players. And just the fact that, I know the guys that are, it was really odd, the group of names that were listed that signed off on, it was an eclectic group of names. Honestly, if my name would have been thrown in the last half of it, people wouldn't have blinked an eye, because they're like, it kind of fit in with a couple other names that just is like, okay, I would have loved to say I approved Tiger to be on the policy board.
Yeah. We should. That would have been a great scoop for the podcast. Hey, listen, we Smylie Kaufman signed this memo and sent it over. I think I agree with you largely on that. I think my view on this maybe differs ever so slightly, but I mean, I look at the last year or so, year plus on tour, and to me, with maybe the exception of this PGA Tour PIF negotiation that kind of came out of left field, at least from a player sense. But even embedded in that, what was the goal there? It was like to get more money to get it to the players, because that's what the players are saying they want. And yes, a lot of that has to do with Live, coming onto the scene and paying, guys to go over there and paying larger purses. But, I think that in a lot of ways over the last year, like the goal has been to get more money into the tour by a lot of different means. And I think that, I would say that sponsors have been prioritized, broadcast partners have been prioritized, but players have been prioritized in a lot of ways too. I think the fans are really the ones who've suffered in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So the thing I think that is really good about this whole piece of Tiger news is it makes the player input a lot clearer and a lot stronger, which is kind of what you're saying. Like, this is zero disrespect to Rory McIlroy. Rory McIlroy is like also trying to play and like use the prime of his career to win events. And it's really, really tough for a guy like that to be a kind of, solidifying force. And I think that, Rory probably in a lot of moments, there's some stuff that he said that maybe he would have, liked to say it differently or would have taken it back, just because there were kind of highly charged emotional moments. And I think it's just tough, the different directions he was being pulled. With Tiger playing less now and commanding the unilateral respect of everybody on tour, the messaging from the player perspective gets a lot clearer. And I think that, whether or not the things that Tiger ultimately, conveys to Jay Monahan or the other, non-player board members as to like what we want, whether that actually does represent every single desire of the various players on the tour, I think at the end of the day, the players are going to respect it and get behind it because it's Tiger. And so I just think that just really helps a lot in terms of, the decision inputs. It's like, hey, here's what the sponsors are saying. Here's what our broadcast partners are saying. And here's what the players are saying via Tiger. That's a very clear set of input. Now we can go and try to make a decision and do it in the best interest of the tour.
Yeah. And I kind of want to follow up a question that you said that the fan is the person that has been losing the most in that. What do you mean by that?
I just think that the fragmentation of the game has really been at the fans' expense, and again, some of the stuff is like out of the control of the PGA Tour. But, when the tour is getting watered down because, a chunk of its best players are going over to a different tour, that's a tough thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that there are, I don't want to critique too heavily, the broadcast partnerships that the tour has, because they're doing it in a lot of ways to get money from a lot of different sources so they can then pull that and deliver that back to players in terms of purses. But it's not the greatest experience there for the fan. The kind of bill of goods you're being sold with some of these events of this is why you care about it, or why you should care about it. Like some of that stuff rings a little bit hollow. Now, like I couch all of that, in a way that is trying to be as fair as I can to the tour, because I understand it's a very delicate time we're trying to navigate. But I think that, what they've been trying to do is to serve all these other masters that are funneling money into the game, which makes a lot of sense, but kind of forgetting in some senses, like the fans are the lifeblood of the game here. And they're also spending a lot of money on this. And so how can we find a way to make this a better overall fan experience, whether that's viewing, whether that's going to tournaments where there are marquee stars there, to me, I think that's one that they've kind of, and I think, really clearer inputs lead to a better experience for the fan. Like Tiger, no doubt knows the value of all those fans and building his brand value. Like I was like, this is just a totally anecdotal experience, but when I was at the PGA Tour Superstore the other day, tinkering around with my broomstick putter, I was in one of the hitting bays, and there was a group of kids from the first tee that are there in a bay next to me. And every one of them, they'd hit a shot, like, oh, that was Tiger Woods. That was my Tiger shot. And it just blows my mind that a guy that's pushing 50, and these kids couldn't have been more than like elementary school, grade school age, still has such staying power with what are budding PGA Tour fans. So I just think Tiger's perspective in serving those types of, the young fans, the fans that kind of grew up with him, the old fans, is going to be really valuable, and hopefully getting the game back to a place where it kind of better serves its largest customer base.
Yeah, it's all very interesting. And you kind of mentioned the broadcast side. I've obviously got a interest in that because I'm that's who's, paying the bills for me. So, I do understand it from that side. It's like, are the media rights too expensive for the networks where they feel like, hey, I mean, these networks are in it to make money. Like let's get real. They're going to put the best product they can possibly put together, but they're at what expense, right? They got to make a profit.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's going to be TrackMan presented by blah, it's like, or if it's going to be one extra commercial in an hour, I'm with you. They don't, our producer or whoever's producer, they don't want to show commercials. They want to show golf. It's a trickle down effect from the top that it eventually squeezes everybody out. So it'll be interesting, man. Like we don't know what the tour is going to look like. I know that schedule comes out on Tuesday. I don't expect it to be some like wholesale change and stuff, but 2025 that we keep referring to, that's where things might get a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, and let's just hit on the schedule a little bit on the way out because it's just worth mentioning. Some of the details have been leaked. That will of course be confirmed on Tuesday, August 8th. But the kind of the rumored change in designated events has more or less been confirmed. The AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am now becomes a designated event. I actually think the branding,
which is great. I'm excited about that.
Good. And by the way, that's a 2-round Pro-Am. It's a smaller field, and they're just going to play Pebble and Spy for those first 2 rounds. And I think it still is going to be a high value thing for sponsors.
I'm for that because here's my thing on that event. It's one of the coolest experiences that I had at playing on tour. Pebble Beach is so cool. Spyglass is amazing. And then Monterey, it's not going to be in the rotation anymore, but that was a really cool golf course. But man, they just haven't gotten the fields there. And it's because of where it's been placed on the calendar. It's like, you know what? The guys the top players don't enjoy playing 5.5, 6 hour rounds, and they would rather just take the week off. And especially if you get a week where the weather's bad there, it's just not quite an enjoyable week. But there's nothing worse than when you take Pebble Beach off and you're sitting at home and you turn on the TV and it's a perfect Pebble Beach week. You're just sitting there like, what am I doing? Like if you told me as a kid that you would be eligible to play at Pebble Beach in that event, and it's a perfect day at Pebble, and you decided, you know what, not for me this week. I'm going to take this week off. It's like, it's just like, what?
Right. And you had some really bad. I mean, at the time on the calendar, the weather can be bad, but even this week, I mean, playing Cypress all week long and like foggy, misty, like mid 50s, low 60s, you're still like turning around and looking out at the Pacific Ocean. You're like, this never, ever, ever gets old. And the sun peeks through and you're like, this is just one of the greatest places in the world where you can play golf. And so I totally agree with you in terms of just that one needs to feel important. And hey, this is where you got to kind of credit the tour. If you're going to criticize the tour, you got to say, what the players say, we want shorter rounds and we want it to feel, kind of high profile. It's like, okay, we're going to make it a bigger purse. We're going to designate it. We're going to cut down the field size. There you go. Yeah.
Then you flip it the other way for the fan experience. That was the most enjoyable Wyndham Championship I've ever watched.
Yeah.
And the reason why was, and I think it'll continue to be that way, 70 spots is, I think it's the perfect sweet spot.
Perfect.
I think it's the perfect sweet spot. It really does separate what I would consider to be, a 7 out of 10 year. If you have a better than a 7 out of 10 year, or 7 and above, then you should be making the playoffs. If you just a little less of that, that's kind of where that 70 to 100 is. And I was looking at, like, for instance, if it would have been top 125 this week for Wyndham Championship, who's in, who's out, it wouldn't have been close to the same amount of drama that we experienced this week in Greensboro. It made no sense too. I need to go look at these numbers, but 125 when I was playing typically was, if you got somewhere around 375 to 400, 400 really was kind of your safeguard of like, okay, you're in the top 125. Right now, after the Wyndham Championship, that number's 292. And it makes no sense to me why it's so less this year. It's not that there were less events played when nothing's changed as far as the schedule and how many times these guys play. So that makes zero sense to me because they still fill out the fields, but maybe they're not getting quite the same amount of players playing certain events, that it's a little top heavy in events and less guys are having the playing opportunities. And maybe that has a trickle down effect to that 292 number, which normally is, I thought, unless they changed the way it's structured, which I don't think they have, that it was always around 350 to 400. And that's a huge jump.
Yeah. The thing I really agree with you on there, especially with the Wyndham this week, is like find a way to create some juice for these events that aren't high profile. And in cutting the playoff line down to 70, you create so much juice for a play-in event. And then even looking next year at the schedule and saying, like, I think it's so smart that they said, listen, the WM Phoenix Open is going to be electric no matter what designation you give this event. So you stick that between the AT&T Pro-Am
they don't care.
And the
They're
Genesis.
Like, they're going to go. People are still showing up.
So it's like you have a reason to care about it. So I think that's the thing, finding ways to, and I think that's going to be a big challenge in terms of, these play-in events to the designated or the signature events, whatever we're calling them now. That's how, going back to what we're saying about creating a better fan experience, that's how you create some value there and some intrigue there and giving me a reason to want to tune in and watch, because you're like, oh, wow, like this has, like, all weekend long, we're out and just, checking the projected standings for the FedEx. Is JT going to get in? Is he not? Is Adam going to get in? Is he not? Like that type of stuff it gives you fan incentive. It's like almost like, a gambling thing, having money on something. Yeah. It makes it interesting.
I guess what does not have that?
To tell.
Live golf.
Yeah. Can I give you a quick Siwon Kim update that I've been tracking? Siwon Kim, T46 this week, 1 over par. Siwon Kim is now 105 over par for the season, and he is earning just shy of $12,000 per shot over par for the season. He's made 1.24 million on the season for shooting 105 over par.
That guy hit the lottery, man.
He really did. I mean, he should be playing these events in a mask with a big bag of loot on his bags. It's just highway robbery. I just want to, on the schedule, just really hitting you real. I think we were talking about Tiger a little bit, and I think that his big impact here was, because we just got to talk about the cut, no cut events, right? And so the no cut events are going to be all the ones that Tiger did not want to have no cuts for. So the Players, the Genesis, the Memorial, and the API, those will all have cuts. All those
Tiger's a big cut guy. He is a big proponent of the cut, and where some of the other top players now are against. They've been kind of sold this, that players or fans won't show up if they can't promise that all the top people would be there. Yeah. In my head, I'm like, that's kind of ridiculous, because you're going to be there.
Yeah.
For the most part. And when we're talking about cutting from 100, like these are 120 man fields for the most part, or they used to be. And I bet they're going to be, were they more like 80 now? Is that kind of where they settled in?
I don't know the final numbers on that, but that was kind of the number that was being floated. And so for those events, those no cut events are going to be, of course, the Century event, which, by the way, they removed Tournament of Champions from that, because it's not just champions. It's now lots of other people too. So that's just going to be the Century. And then obviously the 3 FedEx Cup playoff stops are not going to have cuts, but obviously they get cut down for the following week. And then in addition to that, the AT&T Pro-Am will not have a cut. We just said the celebrity portion of that ends on Friday, but also the RBC Heritage, the Wells Fargo, and the Travelers. None of those events are going to have cuts this next year.
There's always been tiers on the tour, and I don't think we're going to experience anything like the tiers that we're about to have in 2024, because there was always a section of guys that were still in, for instance, Bay Hill, in the Memorial, in Hilton Head, and you're thinking in your head, like, man, did they really play well enough to be in that event? Like what got them in to such a prestigious event? But next year, that's not going to be the case. When you're at these events, it's similar to the majors. It's like they earn their way into these events. And are they going to be too small of a field? Probably going to be just right for the most part. But what it's going to really do, it's going to make those open events on the PGA Tour so freaking competitive.
100%.
And also so difficult to get into. I think the criteria for who can get in to these open events, I'm just hoping that the 30 new Korn Ferry Tour cards don't get squeezed out to where I hope every single one of those guys can get into every PGA Tour open field event that's 144 guys or whatever. That should, the policy board, if they're going to cut guys out and in a sense make guys play more of the open events,
like
they really need to make sure that there's like a category that gets those guys in, because what are we doing here if we can't get these guys playing a full schedule that's like legitimately that they have a chance,
I'm all for that. Like, and I think it's going to be such a good mix next year. Again, those events are going to have way more juice because it's going to be a bunch of young guys, hopefully, like that, the rising stars, the up and comers, a lot of guys we saw play well this year who were young guys making their tour debuts. And you're going to have maybe Adam Scott and Billy Horschel and Shane Lowry and guys like that. These are going to be intriguing events on a number of different levels. So I think that, so much of this is, feels vague right now, feels like we're not quite sure what the level of organization is. They're trying to figure these things out on the fly. But I think as constructed and as intended, like I'm optimistic that this could be a better product this next year. And kind of to your point, it does suffer a little bit from the reality that it could be sort of an interim year while we figure out where this deal nets out and what 2025 looks like. So that kind of is up in the air. But I at least will say that as a fan who still has to watch something next year, and for us who have to cover something on this podcast, it should have a little more intrigue next year.
I think so. And I think we can debate it all the way. So many different areas, but really the world ranking too. Like how do you rank one of these signature event fields versus, just a TPC, Craig Ranch, Byron Nelson field that has a great field that they haven't gotten in the last couple of years, but now it's a solid field. And how do you judge a guy that finishes 10th at Bay Hill versus a guy that finishes 5th at the Byron Nelson? Who played better? Who earned it more? It's just, where do we draw the line of where these fields stack up against each other? Because there might be a guy who finishes 25th in all the signature events and really doesn't have the same type of points as a guy who, let's say, finishes second in one open or two, or finishes second and 10th in an open field event. And now he's ahead of a guy who's finished, top 25 in every signature event he's played in. It's going to be tough to like kind of figure out which is obviously signature events better, but how much more of a jump do these guys get as far as world ranking points and FedEx Cup points?
It will be. And these are things, again, there are a lot of things to iron out here because things are changing quickly. There are naturally going to be sort of unintended consequences of, oh, wait, we didn't necessarily think that one all the way out. But I mean, the hope is like, and it has to be like, hey, they're going to try to just keep working through this type of stuff. And hopefully with input from guys like Tiger and others in a more organized policy board, we get there. So, I mean,
wait, did you see what Phil said?
I did.
Dude, it was kind of, I think it was good. It was good to see Phil have positivity. Even though it was like somewhat sarcastic, it still was like, finally, you guys are doing like taking a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
And
I think Phil has, it was kind of a little bit of like, hey, I'm not just a homer for LIV. Like really what all Phil ever wanted was more player power. And yes. So this is kind of he's staying
money.
True to
I think money too.
A lot of money. Yeah, player power as a means to making a ton of money. But no, I mean, look, I think Phil is a very complex individual in a lot of different ways. And I don't necessarily love everything or even most of the things that he said. But I do think here it's like, hey, good for you for being able to say that's something good the tour did. And that's kind of what we were asking for. And I think that's especially important if whatever this new entity is, Newco, however this shakes out, it's good to have a guy like Phil that if you fold him back into this new tour, saying, okay, cool. Like I'm more on board with what's happening here. So I think that's good. So, I mean, man, if big news week again, I'm sure there's going to be more coming.
There's so much more I can get into. And kind of my parting thought, I would kind of say, and this is kind of a conversation that's been ongoing about the rollback and kind of where we stand on it is taking the driver and bringing it back a little bit, making it a little tougher to hit. And I saw this tweet from the Fried Egg, and I thought it was fascinating. It was a quote about Bryson, and he said, "The drivers is definitely, I don't want to say too much. It's fantastic for anyone that's over 175 ball speed. Ever since I put this driver into play, it's not been really my golf swing. It's just hit on the toe, hit it on the heel. Everything comes back down the middle of the fairway." And I'm like, all right, let's go. Pick up the tee and let's go. The driver has been really nice. It's allowed me to have some time to myself after rounds instead of going and working my butt off all the time. And
Bryson, things you don't say out loud. Like, please just
that's kind of the argument. It's like, and Adam Scott said it best. So we'll keep harping on what he said, which was when guys get nervous now, they go to the driver because it's the most forgiving club in the bag. So that's just kind of my parting thought. And then there was one great tweet that replied to this, and it said, "Just imagine Blocky with Roy's driving and Bryson's driver." I was laughing so hard, man.
Top 10 in the world, maybe top 5 in the world. I mean, who's to say? It wouldn't be fair. You'd be in every signature event next season. That's amazing. Yeah, no, that's one that's ongoing. And I think that, that this is the state of golf today. There's never a dull moment. So that continues next week with the FedEx St. Jude, the first week of the playoffs, which we'll be back here recapping next week. We'll have an interview here on Thursday. But that is all for us.
And the schedule Tuesday as well. So
that's right. The schedule Tuesday.
We'll break down that schedule. I'm excited to see who from the Ryder Cup stands out as far as is it going to be Tony Finau? Who's going to be the guy that says, you know what, Zach, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to put you in a position where you can't not pick me. And there's a handful of guys that can easily play their way on the team. And I think there's some guys that can play their way out of the team in the next 3 weeks. So I'm going to be watching to kind of see who's trending that direction and kind of who's going the other way.
Yeah. What a time to be a golf nerd. Does not get any better. Just does not get any better. Can't wait for that. Can't wait to keep tinkering with my putter, among other things, and sending you videos. But that is all for us this week. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you here on Thursday.